What most people think.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of What Most People Think. And I think this week maybe what most people think is that Peter Mandelson is the stink of British public life that will never fully flush. And I'm so glad that I've got Dominic Frisby with us today. First up, how you doing, Dom? You all right?
Very well, thank you, Jeff. And how's it going with you?
Yeah, it's good, man. I guess the good thing is we're both seasoned campaigners and we are now on our fifth iteration of Peter Mandelson scandals. It's like HS2, isn't it? It's just it will always kind of recycle.
Well, there was nothing I wanted to wake up to more than a picture of Peter Mandelson sending emails in his pants. And I burst out laughing because it was like the Lord of Darkness with his trousers down.
We'll get into to all of that and the stuff, a bit of the stuff with Andrew, but you do start to think about, Keir Starmer's wisdom in bringing him back. There was a US ambassador called Karen Pierce, who everyone more or less agreed was doing a good job. And then you go, you know what really is the smart move here? The Prince of Darkness fella, let's give him another run out. Get warmed up, Peter.
I was going to say it's up there with, but it's even worse than giving David Cameron the gig as Foreign Secretary. I mean, what was he thinking?
I enjoyed Cameron as Foreign Secretary. I don't know. I'm one of these lame soy boy Cameroonians. It was, for me, somebody said Daddy's home. That was a bit sycophantic. But yeah, we'll be talking about Peter Mandelson being back. We're also talking, in sort of more kind of hard political terms about the upcoming by-election in Gorton and Denton and the selection of candidates. There was a Jeremy Clarkson article about reform as well. Obviously Clarkson, a big figure on the British cultural right, and he's asked some quite searching questions about the Reform Party. And then in the Patreon only, we'll be talking about the cost of hiring young people. Now, just to whet your appetite for this Patreon only, I don't know if you're aware of this stat, Dom, but in 2020, to employ a 21-year-old for 40 full-time hours would have cost just over 17 grand, right? Now, 2026, to employ a 21-year-old working 40 hours would cost 29,600.
So it's gone up 12 grand.
Yeah, and I looked in all the comments and I looked to see people debunk this, but no, those seem to be the numbers, which is quite startling. So, obviously the left-wing argument is like, what, you want poor young people to be poor? Yeah, obviously that's what it is. No, it's more a case of what this is doing to the jobs market. So if you're interested in that debate, so obviously get on the Patreon and you'll be able to listen to that. Speaking of piss take prices, we got a couple here. I don't know if you've got any yourself. We got a couple of people have messaged in. Jacob messaged me to say a sausage roll in an unnamed pub in Hertford was £7.50. Now, they originally put it up at £9.50 and put it out on Instagram and had to take it down after loads of people asking if they get shares in the pub. What's going on with bar snacks, Dom? Why do they think they can charge us this?
Well, the one that gets me in pubs and also supermarkets on a similar vein is that non-alcoholic beer costs the same as alcoholic beer. And how is that possible? Because surely there's no tax on non-alcoholic beer.
What are they taxing? It's a virtue tax, isn't it?
How can there be any tax on alcohol tax on non-alcoholic beer?
But what they're taxing you for is your desire to do the right thing. Like it's some kind of a weird moral.
No, they're taxing you because you've been normalised to pay this price for a certain amount of beer. So, yeah, they're taxing your normalisation.
A lot of people have messaged me about the price of sausage rolls in pubs being ridiculously expensive. Is that because once you've had 3 pints, the price of a sausage roll isn't the main thing in your mind? You're just like, I just really want that. I want the pastry. I want the processed meat. Is it dynamic pricing? So the more beer you drink, the more the price of the sausage rolls go up?
There's a bloke from my school who used to run a bakery stand on the Northcote Road in Battersea. And he started selling sausage rolls one time. But you know those that about maybe 10 years ago, sausage rolls suddenly changed and we got this really thick loads of meat in a sausage roll.
Stumpy little ones, yeah.
And he was selling those. But I'll never forget it. And I was going, oh, they look nice or something like that when I saw him. And he just went, oh, you'll never guess the markups in sausage rolls. And that was stuck in my head, the markups on sausage rolls.
It's funny that you mention markup because obviously coffee gets a lot of attention and it is like getting ridiculous in certain quarters. But there are, components. There's the grinding of the beans. There's the expertise. There's the parts and labour of coffee, right? It does have parts and labour. Tea is arguably the biggest piss take because it's literally tea bag, which costs virtually fucking nothing, hot water and a bit of milk. Tea, the fact that tea is almost as expensive as coffee in some places, that's actually the real scandal. If I was coffee shops, I'd now be pushing the shit out of tea.
I would agree with that. And also when you go into a coffee shop and you pay one fee for a small tea and another fee for a large tea, when the tea is just a matter of hot water.
Just a tiny bit more water.
Yeah. And I'm like, how does that work? But they're because you're normalised to do that with coffee, they've sort of passed that over into the tea market.
Well, they might argue the fact that they've doubled their cost for 21-year-olds might be part of the problem, but we'll get into all that in the Patreon only. Another piss take price is Richard, who said he was at a garden centre. First up, Richard, you've gone to a garden centre to eat, so some of this is on you. Okay, as we all know, they're one of the most expensive places to eat in the world. But $15.95 for Welsh rarebit, which is, of course, cheese on toast. $15.95. Then if you wanted to add bacon to it, it was another £3. So nearly 20 quid for a sandwich. You
wait till they start calling it croque monsieur and then the price goes up even more.
New patrons. There are a lot of reasons to be a Patreon. I should also, at the back end of last week, my Jeff Norcott's Working Men's Club was commissioned for a second series on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds, which is great for me. It's the only series I've ever done of anything, and it's getting another run out. But what that means for patrons, not only do you get the podcast early, ad-free, and with bonus content, is when I do the records, and this time there's going to be 2 in Leeds and 2 in Newcastle, is that there will be a guest list for patrons. So that I'll be doing that very soon. So that's another reason to get involved. And a reminder that when I'm out of touring season, I do Jeff Norcott and Friends gigs, and we also have a guest list for that. So as well as the main benefits, there are other benefits. And as you know, Dom, we roast the names, so let's do a few. Mark Scott, never trust a man with 2 first names.
Yeah, no messing around with syllables though.
Yeah, that's very efficient, in and out. That's quite manly to just go, syllables are for women, all right?
That's a man's man.
Mark Scott, or it sounds like an instruction on a football pitch as well. Calvin Lightbody, that's very feminine to have that many syllables. Calvin Lightbody.
Well-known jazz pianist from the 1970s. I did think music, featuring, when it just says featuring, Calvin Lightbody. Well, as we're talking, I'm just seeing, so we're recording this on Monday at 11:10. I've just seen some clips from the Grammys. And as you'd expect, there's stuff about immigration and, some of the stuff that's been happening in the US is a legitimate cause for concern. But there was one thing that the artist Billie Eilish said is you can't be illegal in stolen lands. And it's just like immediately all of the kind of people you'd expect were standing up and doing that thing where the camera's on you, you think, how can I look meaningful? I just sort of thought that's a fun thing to say, but what does that mean? Like, does that mean there's everyone can just go wherever the fuck they want and let's just shake up the snow globe of global immigration and see what the fuck happens? Well, I think she's pushing the argument of the libertarian idyll of no passports, no national borders and no welfare state.
Oh, so you think she's a libertarian? She's gone all the way.
I think she's just like left-wing sound bites, but
she likes saying it.
Unconsciously, she's pushing that argument.
I mean, most of my thing about left-wing stuff is I always think what they're saying would be quite nice. It's just like, I'd love you to live for one day in the world where that was the policy, right? Just see if you can cope for one day. We got Paul Johnson, who just sounds like a kind of economist from the 1850s.
Yep. We're back to the 1970s. Paul Johnson, Mr. Johnson.
I always think if you put another letter in as an initial, suddenly you sound more sophisticated. PJ Johnson. Yeah. Suddenly, if you ever read any PJ Johnson, absolutely brilliant.
He wrote a Bank of England paper about quantitative easing.
Before it was a thing, you predicted it. And then we've got 2 one-namers, Timmy and Sarah, who just sound like kids' TV hosts from the 1980s. We always think that they work, if they're not willing to give their surnames, they clearly work in a woke institution. So what would be the woke institution this week? I think that they were probably taking people's coats at the Grammys last night.
I think Timmy and Sarah I always associate Timmy with Timmy Mallet, but I think Timmy and Sarah sound like they are organising the PTA at the nursery school.
Ah, yes. Timmy and Sarah. They're a couple, and they're actually really they're really beta and inclusive. But after having dealt with them for a year, you realise that they just do exactly what the fuck they want, and the niceness is just a front. Fuck you, Timmy and Sarah.
And they've been embezzling all the PTA money.
Yeah, they're like the Salt Path. You know that couple that made up all that bullshit about going travelling. David Domain, our super patron, keeps an eye on previous episodes. And we were talking about David Lammy and his many titles. And he said David Lammy has 3 ministerial titles currently: Lord Chancellor, Secretary of State for Justice and Deputy Prime Minister. David Lammy actually, he had quite a good PMQs last week. But that was only because the Tory guy absolutely fannied his way through the thing. I always think that if you've made David Lammy look good, then you've really got questions to ask of yourself. We're talking about Gorton and Denton, this by-election. I was saying it sounds like a writing duo from the 70s.
It does, doesn't it?
The old Gorton and Denton scripts. And David Domain correctly says you're probably thinking of Gorton and Simpson, who created Steptoe and Son and worked with Tony Hancock.
I think it's a bit like Rodgers and Hammerstein, but
Yes,
before
yeah.
Rodgers and Hammerstein, it was Rodgers and Hart. So it was Gorton and Denton was before Gorton and Simpson formed.
Yeah. No, they got very close with a sort of early forerunner of Till Death Do Us Part.
It was just called Steptoe rather than Steptoe and Son.
The prequel. They've probably done a prequel for that, haven't they? That ran for a series and didn't do very well. I'll talk about, where do you sit if you are like me, kind of socially liberal, economically, right of centre. Who do you vote for? David Domain says an alternative to the Tories or Reform is the SDP, conservative fiscally and socially to the left of Reform, and is pro-Brexit. Are they, so economically, the SDP, I would have thought that they were to the left of where somebody like me would be. I do think like their leader, you'll know his name, William Clouston.
No, I don't know his name, but I met him and I remember thinking, oh, you're all right.
Yeah, no, he seems like quite an impressive guy. It's one of those like parties that there's every reason they should have a foothold in British politics, but they just don't. I think the SDP are like, those comics that we all know were fucking amazing. Like, I mean, Jeff Innocent now does have a following and does tour, but there were years where you're sort of like, Jesus Christ.
The SDP is the Mike Gunn of politics. Brilliant, always storms it. Nobody knows who he is.
Yeah, Mike is absolutely fantastic.
What most people think.
The thank you and the fuck you. I'll do the thank you. So I am back out touring now, back into it. And on Thursday, I did Cambridge, and that was great. There was a person there that had an unusual laugh, it's fair to say. And I don't know about you, Dom, but I've learned from experiences that if you actually acknowledge it early on, it's not their fault that their laugh is unusual. It means that the audience can't necessarily tune out of it. So the best thing to do, like move into a new house that has some odd noises, is just fucking get used to it, really. Just pretend it's not happening.
Yeah, you sort of got to acknowledge it and not discourage it, because the last thing you want to do is discourage someone from laughing.
Can't tell somebody off for laughing. Like, you just facial expressions are the key. And I did Salisbury on Saturday, and then I did Wimborne last night. Great turnout in Wimborne. It is, the show, I'm doing loads of new bits in it. Got stuff about Trump and Venezuela, so I've updated it for this year. The funny thing was, though, like, I keep an eye on costs when I'm on tour. And so I checked out of my Travelodge in Ringwood. That's already sad. At 2 p.m. yesterday. And then I sort of thought, I'll kill some time. I'll go to a local gym. I'll get some lunch. And that'll sort of take me up to, when the venue will be open. That took about an hour and a half. So it was about 4 p.m. Long story short, I was basically sitting in my car outside the venue in the pissing rain, just thinking, what the fuck? This is like one of the most tragic things. And I couldn't get the attention after. I tried to get in the venue after 6 p.m, but I couldn't get anybody's attention. And I was just standing there, absolute drowned rat, knocking on this door. I thought, God, if any of the punters can see me, if I was them, I'd just give my ticket back and go, I don't want to see that. That's too sad. Yeah,
it's so bad in winter, isn't it, when it's cold?
But just sitting in your own car outside the venue. Having said that, other places I'll be sitting in my own car this coming week. Wednesday in Lincoln, good sales there, still some tickets left. Thursday in Colchester is sold out. Stockton is kicked on Saturday. And then Hexham, seriously Hexham. If you want people of my calibre, all right, don't fucking disrespect me with the current level of sales. I'm sick and tired of comics pretending to be nice about it. You were downright fortunate Do you like my counterintuitive pitch here? Yeah. I mean, I've got into trouble there. I did it with Aldershot and it ended up causing problems. But seriously, if you're in Hexham on Sunday night, I know you've got fucking Hadrian's Wall, whatever shit you got going on there, and some Roman stuff, but do come to my show. Dom, the fuck you. What's the fuck you this week?
I just had a weekend in France where I went via Ryanair. And so I've got about 53 fuck yous to Ryanair. But it's actually trumped by a woman who I did one of my shows at Crazy Cox a couple of months ago. And there was a woman in the second half who got drunk and she kicked off and she started shouting and making all sorts of accusations, totally disrupted the show. I was trying to be polite because Crazy Cox is a lovely, polite venue. And the rest of the audience were like, fucking shut up. But while I was trying to be polite. And then I said, look, we'll have a talk after the show and we'll address all your issues then. And she was like, okay. And I've got a video of it. And she was just wrong on so many different levels. Anyway, after the show, her husband very politely came up to me and said, would you like to have dinner? And I was like, well, no, I don't want to have dinner after you've just disrupted my show. But in any case, I already had plans and I'd already eaten. And she just sort of swanned out of the venue and went, come and have dinner. And I didn't go. And over the next month, she's like emailing the venue, trying to get all my shows pulled. And it's like, we do these shows once or twice, once every couple of months, once a month. They sell out months in advance. We've had like boxing heavyweight world champions in the audience, former prime ministers, peers. It's just such a good show. And she's tried to get the whole thing cancelled. So my fuck you is to you. It's so disproportionate that one stinky drunk person can carry all this weight and undo all the stuff that you build over many years. And what she doesn't realise is like there's a drummer, a bassist and a keyboard. She's trying to put those people out of work. Never mind the comic whose jokes she doesn't like.
It's so astonishing how thin-skinned some people are about they had a feeling in a public space and what the sort of tyranny of how far they think they should be able to go to war for whatever it was that they felt that they were not in on the joke in that moment. But also, you know, how often, sadly, venues often aren't just built to deal with those sort of complaints. They panic. I remember I was doing a cruise ship many moons ago. Like there were 300 people who saw a show and there was a bit of swearing in and one person swore and then they asked everybody. So we were doing shows on the subsequent 3 nights and they asked everybody not to swear. And I said to them, do you realise that you're sort of prioritising one person ahead of the 299? So 299 people were happy with the product, potentially, or certainly the vast majority of them. It was a great show. And you're just panicked. That's the problem. And I just find it incredible. I thought, you know, after we highlighted echo chambers and spoke about confirmation bias and all that sort of stuff, that eventually we'd evolve into a better place. But it seems like people are as thin-skinned about their own opinions as they ever were.
Oh my goodness me. And the thing is, like, if I was, you know, preaching hate speech or something and advocating death to the infidel or death to a certain group or whatever, then you might have a case. But it was a comedy show with jokes. Do you know what I mean? And people just take jokes literally or they get upset. I have friends who are involved in the New Culture Forum and they just say, you know, we can organise a conference over 3 days, you know, and it takes an extraordinary amount of work to organise a conference. And then just one person somewhere along the way will complain to the venue and the conference will get cancelled and everything just gets undermined because one person has hurty feelings. It's like this disproportionate weight is given to some vocal minority and I don't know how you stop it, but anyway, fuck you.
Okay, we're going to start off talk about domestic politics now, and we're going to talk about the selection of candidates firstly for the Gorton and Denton sitcom. Sorry, by-election. So, by now, we've got all of our candidates. And it should be said that the candidates for the by-election in Gorton and Denton was shaping up to potentially be a heavyweight contest, right? It was going to be potentially Zia Youssef versus potentially Andy Burnham versus potentially Zach Polanski. And what we've ended up with is slightly different, right? It's Matt Goodwin. The Labour candidate was announced on Saturday. I don't know her name. She's a Greek lady that's made her life in Manchester. The Green candidate has come out. It's another female candidate. I don't fully know her name, but I know that she's like a plumber, and that's part of her USP. and a Tory candidate has come out, it's another it's just not what it was billed to be. It's not what it was built to be. It was building up to be the closest that a by-election could ever be to pay-per-view. You know, one where you get the lads round and go, let's watch the results, get a few beers in. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with the Reform candidate, Dom, is it's Matt Goodwin. Now, he is a strident voice, you know, in the British right, historian, now part of the Reform Party. And he... sorry, was you going to add something there about the candidate?
I Googled her name and then I forgot it. But I've just remembered it now. I just Googled it again while you were talking. Angeliki Stoggia.
Angeliki Stoggia versus Matt Goodwin. So the interesting thing, I was thinking about the selection of candidates, starting with Reform, is I wondered if it was a slightly risky pick for them, because there are a lot of people in the online space on the left who really dislike this guy, you know, because of his views on immigration and stuff like that. And I just wondered, is there, and maybe it's not so prevalent a danger now given the candidates have been picked, but was there a risk that he was like a lightning rod, that you would unite the left and they'd say, look, whatever we think about Labour, fuck it, let's just vote Labour because the idea of this guy winning is too much for us? Is that a danger for them?
Well, I don't know what Reform's thinking was, but I do know that Matt Goodwin is quite influential within the party. Obviously, both him and Farage work at GB News, so their paths will cross every time they're both in the building, which is, you know, pretty often. And they're mates, and Matt will always speak at Reform events. So he's pretty high up in the sort of Reform hierarchy, even with all the newcomers that have come over from the Tories, and we'll talk about them, I'm sure, before the programme's out. So yeah, it's a risky seat. And I'm surprised that they haven't put him forward for a seat. I know he's written on his Substack, he's always had ambitions to be an MP. And I think it happens with a lot of commentators. They think, I'm going to turn my hand to being an MP. And as someone who did this once, I lasted less than a week as a prospective candidate for the Brexit Party at one point. And it was the worst week of my life. I was a week in Edinburgh, and, there were people writing UKIP, CUNT on my Edinburgh poster. And my daughter, who was like 13 at the time, going, why have they written that on your poster, Daddy? And I was like, oh my God, the aggro from this.
And also, annoyingly, you're going, Actually, I'm a Brexit CUNT. Get it right.
Exactly. It's not even accurate. So I'm surprised, because I think that constituency is like 28, 30% Muslim. And obviously, Reform is targeting the Muslim vote with Zia Yusuf. And so they are positioning themselves for that. But you have to assume that Mancunian Muslims will largely vote Labour. And then Labour have had the opportunity to put a Muslim candidate in, and they didn't. They put this Greek woman in. And so I'm sure they've all got their wisdoms, but with a 28% Muslim vote, I don't think this is I'm surprised in a funny kind of way Reform didn't put one of their Muslim candidates in, and maybe Zia Yusuf wanted to make sure that he's in a safer seat, and Goodwin's taking a risk, and I don't know if it's a slam dunk for Reform, I really don't. And that must be why Polanski didn't put himself forward, because it's too easy a one for Green to lose.
I just think that the risk is so high, and also the Reform brand is strong. So surely this is one where you just go, actually, let's just put Dave Smith of the Reform Party, right? Somebody that doesn't actually have any specific baggage, and let's stick him forward. And Labour have gone in, you could tell that they almost rubbing their hands because they had pre-prepared stuff on him that came out of their press office, and some of it was a bit fucking dismal. I mean, a lot of their strategy seems to be he hates Manchester by sharing clips that were clearly not him speaking about Manchester as a place. And I do wonder with Labour at some point, if you look at the last election, at some point they've got to come up with an argument which is vote for us because, rather than don't vote for them because, vote for us. And do that without mentioning fucking breakfast clubs, Well,
I agree. And I mean, they're doing that thing that all politicians do and everybody does, but they're smearing the man rather than attacking the policy. And but the thing is, this is the risk of somebody who maybe was a comedian or, Matt Goodwin he writes a very popular and lucrative Substack. He's on GB News. He builds his following by saying inflammatory stuff and controversial stuff and pushing the boundaries. But in doing that, he's going to get smeared, misrepresented, and he makes himself a target. And so that's the price that you pay. And Matt's obviously now paying that price. But that's the risk you take when you go from media let's just say Jeremy Clarkson decided he wanted to go and stand for politics. And I'm citing him because we've talked about, we're going to talk about him. But, Clarkson's just said so many controversial things over the years when the moral line was in a different place. It's not going to be hard to find something that Clarkson said in the past, or a clip from Top Gear or something, the Mexican clip or whatever it is. And you absolutely crucify him. And that's the risk you take.
Well, that's the thing with Clarkson is if he ever stood for a constituency, given how long he's been in public life, you just go, all right, what's a constituency? Cleethorpes. Search Jeremy Clarkson, Cleethorpes, and then you go shithole, dump, anything that he might have said. You go, yep, there you go, 1999. Called it a shithole.
What most people think.
The stakes are high for this by-election, though, right? Because if you look at it from Reform's point of view, is if they don't win here, like the argument that we've got a clear path to number 10, like as a majority party, you go, well, if you can't win while your poll rating is this high with a historically unpopular government, the stakes are high for them there. But they're also, if you look at Labour, like they're very high for Labour as well, because you look at Starmer, if, the focus of not picking Burnham, if Reform win, it's all back on him, right? You've now opened up a pathway for them for number 10. I guess that maybe the logic of picking this lady with Greek heritage is that the left might find it easy to unite about her. She's female, she's got an immigrant story. There might be people who might have voted Green otherwise that go, yeah, that's the kind of candidate I can get behind. But it is really weird. It is really weird for a race that was shaping up to be some heavyweights, to be a lot of people that people might not have heard of.
Yeah.
I might not even stay up for it at this point.
We all thought we were getting tickets for Muhammad Ali against George Foreman, and it turns out it's me and you fighting, Jeff.
It was going to be the Rumble in the Jungle, but now it's the skirmish
in Dervish.
In Dervish. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, the Tory candidate, I don't know what's going on there. That it's not somebody that has much of a political rep. I don't know if that... It's tricky for the Tories, isn't it? Because they kind of go, who do we want to win? No, probably no one, right? Because if Reform win, they go, right, we're the natural next party of government from the right. If Labour win, it sort of undermines the narrative that they're on course to be obliterated in the next election. But if they stand aside, it's almost an unofficial alliance, isn't it? So the Tories have just gone, welcome, lady no one's ever heard of.
Well, she's a Reform detective. But what we all want to know, Jeff, is who has rejoined the EU party selected? Because this is the party that's really going to shine here.
Deborah Meaden. So the aforementioned Jeremy Clarkson, so he did an article in The Sun at the back end of last week. And you might say, well, he's not a politician. Why are you talking about it? Well, he's absolutely been an important figure on the British right, I would say, certainly culturally. And people might have been wondering, like, where is he at on the Reform thing? And it's fair to say that what he said was on the verges of being a bit scathing. He sort of accepts that the Union Party have failed, but also basically says, I'm not sure Reform are the answer, and he implies that people will regret what happens. He also goes on to say they don't have a policy platform here. So I think, this is quite like a meaningful intervention it's interesting. It's interesting. The one question I've got, regarding policy is do Reform need to have policy at this point? Because we just, not long ago we had an election where Labour did the old Ming Vase. Maybe it's the right-wing Vase. The right-wing Ming Vase. But the problem for the Reform is that they're proposing some radical shit. As we all know, look, I know the British Civil Service love getting their teeth into radical reform. They can't think of anything they'd rather do. But it's going to demand like serious political expertise and know-how. So what they're saying is radical. So they're going to need a policy platform that suggests how they're going to get to those outcomes. Do they need to start putting some meat on the bones?
Well, I've read Clarkson's article, and I think he's got a point. And I think he was a bit more scathing than you described him as. Maybe I read a later edit or something, but I thought he was pretty. Farage won't like reading that article. You sort of imagine those two are coming from a similar place, and he basically the nub of the article is prepare yourself for disappointment, and I think he's probably right.
Yeah.
And he bemoans the lack of policy from Reform, and it's a common criticism, and I guess they'll present their manifesto in due course when the time is right, and they'll just say, well, we're not at the point where we're ready to write our manifesto yet. And the problem with giving a policy is it gives your enemy a target with which to attack you and undermine you. And then when they change their policy a bit closer to the election, then they go, oh, well, you flip-flopped or whatever. So, I guess it's sad, really, because it's not what politics should be. Politics should be about, these are my principles and you elect me on the basis of my competence and my principles. But it's politics is just such a dirty game now. And Farage is doing what Starmer did, which is trying to stay as neutral as he can about anything, everything, in order to give the opposition fewer targets to attack him with, so that he increases the probability of his getting elected. I completely get why he would do that. The problem with his doing that is he just becomes another Starmer. Yes,
and if they do come out with any half-decent policies, like you say, it's either attack it or steal it, which sounds like a new sort of game show format with Ben Shepherd. Attack or steal. Okay. Yet another fucking quiz. By the way, I'd be on it because, that's the only thing comedians get booked for these days. The other problem I suppose Reform have got is some of their policies or how that they would stimulate growth. You might say tax cuts, right? Because you can't assert, it's hard to believe we could do any more spending. But then the moment they get into that territory, Labour can go, there you go, they're just Thatcherites hiding in the Reform Party. So they can't do much there. So you would think then that the way is now open for the Tories to absolutely be the small state, low tax party. It's hard for them to run on that because they had a fairly decent opportunity to do that. But they're the only players on the pitch that can make that argument. And am I deluded, Dom, in thinking that at some point there'll be a migration back to the Tory vote and it will come from the right of the Lib Dem party? Because there are fiscally conservative Lib Dems that will eventually think, well, there's nobody currently talking up for low tax small state, right? All Ed Davey really does is sort of zingers about Donald Trump and stuff about the EU. He hasn't got the latitude to say anything right wing economically. Is that just a delusion? Will we end up with sort of like all three, the Reform, Labour and the Tories, all on around mid 20% at the next election?
I think so. I think the Social Democrats are probably the only party talking about what you said, and they're not, they're not really going to feature. I think philosophically, Farage is Thatcherite. He used to be a metals trader. He understands gold and sound money, and he comes from that culture that admires what Thatcher did. The problem is every time they go, we're going to cut taxes on this, the media goes, well, if you're going to cut taxes, you're going to have to cut spending. What they failed to do, what somebody needs to do, is to make the argument that I make him daylight robbery, but it's a repeated lesson of history, which is if you lower taxes, then government revenue will actually increase because there is more economic turnover. So you might get a smaller portion, but it's a smaller portion of greater turnover. So you end up with more revenue. And this, history has proved this time and time again, that government revenue increases when taxes are lower. And it's just no politician is able to articulate that or say it. But you would see it, for example, if you had lower stamp duty, housing market turnover would increase. And we talked about at the very beginning of the show, the sheer cost of employing a young person. Well, if you lower all the various NI contributions and employment costs and so on, you will get more young people employed. So you will have fewer people on benefits and you will have more people who are net earners, and you will increase turnover, and you will lower your expenses on welfare. So, and you turn someone who is a net taker into a net payer. And it's just so obvious. And I would like to hear Farage or Tice or Jenrick or whoever's going to be, the financial guy making that argument, but I'm not hearing it at the moment. That's not saying they're not making it. I'm just not hearing it.
That all made me wish that you spent another week in politics, just get back involved. And just a final sort of closing thought. You mentioned Farage there. I just realised as well is that my Nigel Farage and my Jeremy Clarkson caricature are broadly the same. So I could never do a duologue in which they talk to each other. So, Dom, obviously, The Secret History of Gold, people should, that's your most recent book. Obviously, Daylight Robbery is still available. Are you, and your clips game, what's your clips game like, bro? Obviously, as comics, we need to talk about this.
What does that even mean?
Your songs, putting out clips, bro, on TikTok,
yes.
Instagram.
Well, I've taken a new direction because what I found was when we put out the song videos, they were basically music videos. A lot of people didn't realize that the guy who made this music video actually does gigs. So, for example, when we put out We're All Far Right Now and Elon Musk shared it and blah, 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 it had 70 million views. I mean, it's just an astonishing number, 70 million. Mm. But it translated to 2 ticket sales in Guildford.
Oh, my God. So there's me sitting outside the venue in my Renault.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's you turning up at Guildford thinking I've been upgraded to the main room.
Yeah, exactly. So what I've started doing in the clips game is instead of making music videos is just posting clips of me doing gigs, playing the songs at gigs. And the conversion rate, I mean, it's so fucking obvious when you think about it. I can't believe we didn't realize it sooner, but the conversion rate's extraordinary. And I put them out on my newsletter, Frisby's News, but we also put them out on Facebook and everywhere else. They just convert really well. And so my clip game is more about live gigs than music videos now.
And it's so interesting, isn't it? 70 million views, but people don't make the connection. And then you might have 4,000 views, but people make that connection. I had a tweet last week that went like pretty viral, ended up with like 140,000 likes on X. Sorry to all the people that don't use social media, but in the current world of X, that's ridiculous. That's loads, right? It equated to 2 new followers. Like it had like 7 million views. So yeah, the connection is people need to see you in the environment doing the thing that you do and go, yes, I want to experience that. And you should all experience Dominic Frisby live.
And by the way, even more like obvious than that is that after there is a clip of me doing a gig, I just put a voiceover on the end of the clip going, and if you want to come and see me live, I'm doing gigs at blah, 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 blah. And you almost need the call to action in addition to the clip.
Mate, people wonder why comedians constantly go on about their live dates, right? I'm currently doing like a bit of promo on Facebook for the 40-date spring leg, right? And there's the text is, there's a video of me doing stand-up, similar to you, like, come see this thing. Here's me doing it pretty well in these clips, right? And it sort of says, I'm in like Peterborough next month on the 31st of March or whenever it is. And then in the comments, there was a woman going, she tagged in a mate going, I can't believe we missed this. It literally says in the copy, I'm there next month, and it says the dates. And somehow she's extrapolated that because she's seeing a gig, she thinks, that was the gig, and it's happened before, but he's just letting us know that he had a nice time. All right, we're going to talk about the Epstein files, but more specifically Peter Mandelson. I turned up to do my Times radio show on Friday, Dom, and they said to me, have you heard? And when you're doing a radio show, a couple of hours before, have you heard is not a good sign. This means that the next sort of 5 hours of your life could be unbelievably...
Times radio with Jeff Norcott.
Haven't you heard? Be your voice saying it as well.
I'm the station voice. Have you heard, Jeff?
It's all kicking off. You need one of those as well. It's all kicking off on Times Radio. So I'm thinking this could be change the running order of the show massively. And so there's 3 million documents, voice notes, pictures, files, everything relating to Epstein. First up, the attention was very much on Trump because there were some very lurid accusations in it. But, looking into it, and I'm not saying that there's not more to come because people are still looking at it, but some of these were literally, it's almost like Crime Stoppers. People have phoned into a phone line, said something had happened, and, the actual sort of verification of it is not there yet. Who fucking knows what happens in the future, right? But what was there was more stuff for the fucking Dumb and Dumber, the creepy Dumb and Dumber of British public life, fucking Andrew and Peter Mandelson. I mean, these guys, if they'd have just gone at some point, I did some fucking bad shit. I took money from this guy. I saw stuff. Do you know what I mean? If they'd have done that 2 years ago, their lives would be so much better now. But they've just tried to cling on. And, when it comes to Andrew, there's this photo of him sort of on all fours crouching over this girl. You don't know what state she's in and stuff like that. But the problem for him is people will correlate that with previous things and, draw conclusions. And with Mandelson, his thing all along has been, I didn't know about any of the bad stuff. But the problem he's got, right, and I don't have any proof that he knew about that stuff at all. The problem is the moment it gets proved that you've had money off this bloke, we think, okay, when rich blokes give you money, do they sometimes want something in return? I mean, fuck, how this guy has come back so many times in British public life. It's the epitome of privilege, isn't it? People want to talk about privilege. This is exactly what it looks like, is to fucking be duplicitous, make bad decisions, but continually get another go.
And yeah, the total lack of accountability. And you know, that's when people start talking about one rule for some and one for others. And, you know, the definition of an Epstein party, I mean, it's like all those people who talk about the Illuminati. I mean, they kind of got a point. It's Epstein's guest list.
Well, I think weirdly, like, it's probably happened throughout public life with the great and, you know, the powerful. You know, there is clearly something that happens, and, you know, to predominantly men, where they get to a point where they sort of think, I should fucking do whatever I want, right? Because everything around them suggests that, yeah, you should. And there's a lot of people who don't really ever question them. But like, it's so embarrassing that some of the stuff that comes out. Like, did you see the Sarah Ferguson email where she said, thank you for the kind words you said about me in front of my daughters. You were the brother I wish I always had. You're like, it's so utterly fucking debasing. And the thing with Mandelson, like, is he's done these interviews. He did one not that long ago on the BBC, and he said his answer to, you know, did you know about the stuff that was going on there? His answer was, he said, do you not think, you know, in that haughty way that he's got, do you not think if I'd known what was going on that I wouldn't have said something? You go, okay, in my view, again, I don't know what he saw or didn't see, but rhetorical questions that you pose to yourself in the third person aren't necessarily the best way to express total ignorance of the fact. Do you remember on Jeremy Kyle where they catch a bloke cheating?
Yeah. And
he would go, but why would I do that when I love my wife and kids? You go, yeah, that sounds like a question you're asking yourself, mate.
Well, it's a common deflection technique, isn't it?
Babe, why would I'm 49. Why would I be caught in a lap dancing club with 3 separate women dancing for me, even though we're supposed to be saving for my son's college fund? And just to be clear, that was so specific. That sounds like something that I have done.
There's a very good film, which I recommend you to watch if you've never seen it, called Kingpin, comedy film with Bill Murray and
I love Kingpin. Yeah,
it's one of the great films. And Bill Murray plays this sort of really sleazy, cheating bowling champion who just basically fucks over Woody Harrelson and then ruins his career. And he just gets worse and worse as the film goes on. But when he wins the championship towards the end of the film, he comes out with the classic line, "I'm finally above the law." and I think that's kind of exactly what you're talking about with sort of successful middle-aged men, that I'm finally above the law.
I mean, but the thing is, we've seen it in showbiz, right? We've seen what happens. Like, you know, I've been in and around that world. I've written on shows. I've been on shows. When there's somebody that can do that thing, which is very hard, which is get ratings, right, and get eyeballs, that even at that level, there are dispensations made to people, and everyone will know about the kind of creepy sex pests in the comedy industry, right? There are dispensations made in comedy. So then all you have to do in your brain is scale that up to go, what if that person now had 400 million and sometimes gave out little gifts to his mates? It's just, you know, this podcast is called What Most People Think. And, you know, I think in the case of Andrew and Peter is that what they think is that not only is there no smoke without fire, the smoke has been smoking for ages, and the fire is ticking over. It's crackling away in the fireplace. So how much longer this guy gets to remain a lord for? Any minute more that he's a lord, in my view, is too fucking long.
What most people think.
Okay, me and Dom now are going to talk about the pay for young people and this startling stat on what it costs to employ a 21-year-old now versus what it did a short time ago. If you want to listen to that, join the Patreon. But for everybody else, it will be the end of the show. Well, if you want to hear two guys who believe in lower taxes getting really angry about the state of the economy, then that was absolutely the one for you. And a reminder that Dom has his book, Daylight Robbery, which sits nicely with that theme, and also The Secret History of Gold. Where can people see you live coming up, Dom?
Well, I've got 2 newsletters. I've got one for all my financial and economic stuff called The Flying Frisby, and you should all subscribe to that. It's absolutely brilliant. And if you're interested in my comedy, Frisby's News, FRISBYS, frisbys.news is the place. And I've also registered, I'm quite pleased with this website name, frisby.lol. And that takes you, did you know you can get .lol
Is that does that mean something like, or is it just mean what it seems to mean? Like,
well, it's like a .com or .co.uk, and said you can get .lol, and so I thought Frisby.lol was quite a good one. So you can find my newsletter via Frisby.lol. It's kind of, you should get jeffnorcott.lol instead of Jeff.
You should have said it on the podcast. All comedians will be doing it now.
I know.
You are my friend. You're a true disruptor, the Elon Musk of the comedy world. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. And I'll be back later this week with a breaking news episode.